This is the art of startup war. And my name is Brian McMahon, your host and sensei. Here is what we know. 98% of startups will fail every single day, and mostly due to reasons outside your control. The Expert Dojo Startup Accelerator, we look to even up the playing field by sitting down with the greatest minds in startup investment right here in our studio in Silicon Beach, where we look to shine a light on your path to success. Now, our guests each week have invested millions of dollars into startups and are the most respected investors in the world. Now, they share all they know with you, the listener. So join us on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, starting off your week winning the war against startup failure. We're back again. It's another week. It is the art of startup war. You got Brian here again, as I always am. I am with my very good friend here, Sunny Singh, who is not just an awesome human being, but a great angel here in Santa Monica. I think almost immediately after we first met, he came around and started mentoring and helping the startups over in Dojo. So welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure being here at the dojo.
Dude, you're a top man. So we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the usual stuff, like how do you build a great business? What does a great startup look like? What's a great entrepreneur? All those awesome things. But before we do that, I want to go back into your history. Now, we don't spend enough time, or I don't spend enough time actually, really focusing on what helps an angel become as successful as you've become. And so rather than just looking into how you think about startups, I'd love to just go into your mind a little bit and just take me back into how you became the success you are today.
Well, so for that, we'll have to go back all the way to 2004. So that's 14 years ago.
Yeah, coming out of the crisis.
Right, coming out of the crisis, a lot of issues with the war and all those problems going on. And 2008 was right around the corner, which we didn't see coming.
Sure.
So I graduated, from my undergrad in 2007, which was, okay, great. You're getting a good corporate job. Everything looks great. And then suddenly 2008 came around. Everything crashed. Mm-hmm. Now, I was already hired. I had a good job. Everything was comfortable. I was financially independent, not personally independent, but financially independent. There's an important distinction there.
Yeah.
So I still had to put in the 40.
I got you. There's work to go, right?
Right. Yeah. Like 40 to 50 hours a week. Couldn't do what I wanted to, but I was getting paid.
Yeah.
And 2008 came around. A lot of my friends got laid off. Lots of problems. I saw the struggles people had. But some of them started doing their own thing. And it was not by choice, but by compulsion. And I saw a couple of them becoming really successful, doing well for themselves, having the personal time they needed. I'm an avid boxer, weightlifter. I want time to do those things. I couldn't with corporate life on my head all the time.
Yeah.
And that's where I saw these people doing really well. And I was like, okay, even though I have a job, why not quit and go to either go to school or become an entrepreneur?
Wow.
So I started doing both, actually. So I went to school.
That's brave, especially as you just started.
Right.
You nailed down like a really nice job. You're in the worst financial crisis of 20, 30 years.
Well, my thinking was that this is the right time to do it because there'll be opportunity after the crisis. And it was just something that my father had taught me that, if you see a crisis, there's probably economic opportunity there. Now, full disclosure, I was not strapped with student loans because I had a full scholarship through undergrad. So that was a big, starting point. It put me ahead of the curve.
You bring up a really interesting point though about when everybody else is panicking is the time that you actually have probably the greatest opportunity. It's when everything is great and everybody's making loads of money that you can have opportunity, but actually as an entrepreneur, the real opportunity is when everything is falling apart because you start to find out what people really need.
Right. And you also start to find out who your real friends are. You start to realize who the good team members are going to be and what's going to help you in your life, because people are all, when everything's going well, there are enough resources, there's a lot to go around, everyone stays in character, they're happy. It's when everything goes downhill that you find out what people truly are.
Yeah.
So at that point, the people I met and the people who are willing to come on board with me are the people who've been the greatest supports in my life, including my wife. That's the time I met her. So.
Beautiful. So what did you do?
So I went to grad school. Uh, I wasn't willing to go to graduate school in a place that didn't offer me a full scholarship.
Yeah.
And that's because at those bad times is when I would understand which graduate school is going to really appreciate my skills.
Yeah.
Now, if I told them I'm going to pay for grad school, then it means that they don't really appreciate the skills I'm bringing to the table.
For sure.
And that's where I ended up going to UCLA, and I went straight through the PhD program. That was a tremendous learning for me. My advisor in the PhD program turned out to be an entrepreneur himself.
Uh-huh.
And that's, in hindsight, it's because of the 2008 crisis where all the funding was drying up. So if a professor had to provide funding to his students, he had to be a hustler himself.
Yeah.
If he wasn't, then he wouldn't get any federal funding or state funding. And so it turned out that I was being guided by a hustler who was a professor in disguise.
Beautiful.
And he had started a few companies. He worked for Ford Motors. He had a NASA medal. And he had sold a couple of startups before he became a professor. So he started talking about how to turn technology into a company. And we started working on a technology that was a medical device technology. And I saw the whole process. I had angel investors come in, talk to us, invest in the company.
How hard was that? Because it's the other side of the fence of where we are today.
Oh, it was really hard. I didn't know how hard it was because my professor was doing all the work. And even though he had a lot of gray hairs, he had 2 successful companies under his belt, he had a NASA medal, he was an inventor, he had all these accolades, hundreds of patents. He still had to go and pitch in front of these investors. He still got grilled. He still had to do all of this work that I saw him doing to get a few $100,000.
Wow. And was that how much did you raise in total?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do remember that it got me and a few other PhD students through their degrees. So it was a substantial amount of money.
Amazing. So then you launched the company, you had the angel investment in place, you created a great team, which is again one of the really good lessons for entrepreneurs to be listening here is Sonny didn't just go ahead himself and say, hey man, I got an app, I'm going to build it. It's medical devices, I'm really smart in the medical space, well, build it. He surrounded himself with the most brilliant people he could possibly find, including someone who had already exited before. And that level of importance for me is right up there at the top. Because we know how hard this is. So what happened next?
So, like you put it, I stood on the shoulder of giants. And so I was able to see further. And I realized that, okay, this company is basically heading towards an exit. Because if I analyze what my professor did before, it was obvious that's where they were going. They had external angel investment coming in. They were pitching to other VCs. And so I said, okay, why don't we file a patent? And I want to be on that patent, even though I'm a student. And so that's exactly what happened. Myself and the other PhD students that were working on the project, and of course my PhD advisor, we're all in the patent. And then now we get paid royalties, like in perpetuity. The company was acquired, and the device went through FDA approval. The university helped with that, and the experience of the team around me helped a lot with that. And that's where I became more and more interested in the investing side of things because I saw the investors made a lot of money too.
Yeah.
And that's where all of that started. This was back in 2013, so 5 years ago.
A wise investor is a wealthy investor in the early stage space because you can make tremendous returns.
Right.
And it's interesting, if you had gone for this yourself without the professor and you had gone to all those angels, you think you would have raised the money?
My chances would be drastically lower. I can definitely say that it would be drastically lower because they do look at the team experience. And that's something I realize now being an angel investor, that the experience your team has in a certain industry is very important. You could be the smartest person in the world, but it doesn't matter if you don't have relevant real world experience. And that's the first key element that my PhD advisor brought to the table. I don't think it would be easy.
And there's also perceptual experience as well. And I'm specifically spending a little bit of extra time here because it just is I cannot describe. I've seen so many amazing entrepreneurs come through here who have absolutely no potential of being able to raise money because they're not perceived to be what it looks like for that perfect entrepreneur. And sometimes you have to blur the lines yourself by bringing in people who just fit those perfect models of what the angels and the VCs want to see. Sometimes they're huge, like your professor, like massive. You just tick all the boxes, right? Unbelievably successful, great exited entrepreneur, really knowledgeable, and then also looks great for VCs and angels. But sometimes it's just one or two or three of those boxes that gets ticked.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's no doubt that VCs and angel investors are looking for certain types of people, and if you don't fit that mold, there's that oh my god moment, and then they start discussing that okay, this doesn't fit and this doesn't fit. So there are stereotypes, and those stereotypes are real. If you can just create the perception that you fit those stereotypes, your odds of success definitely increase.
Yeah.
You don't have to change yourself.
Yeah.
You could still be a really great entrepreneur, but still mold yourself to the kind of pitch that the angels and the VCs are looking for. It increases your odds of success, in my opinion.
That's a great point. I mean, even Bird, I just read this morning, their valuation is now creeping up to $1 billion. 12 months after they got founded in a totally non-defensible business where they're not even really first to market, they're just first to Santa Monica, right?
Right.
And they get $1 billion. Why? Because the VCs love their founder. The founder had a mediocre success, a good success with selling one of their companies, got into Lyft, and then got into Lyft, got into Uber. The VC world get to know this person, Travis. They love this person, and the valuation he's getting is maybe 10, 15 times more than anyone else for that reason alone, in my humble opinion.
Right, you're correct. It's like one of your friends. You'd do anything for them.
Yeah.
But even though they might not be the best influence on you, just because you like them.
Yeah.
And so human emotions play a huge role in investment, no matter what any venture capital firm or angel firm tells you. At the end, in the end, they're people sitting there. They're humans. They have emotions, and they do all their logical analysis. But in the end, if they like you, they'll probably give you a better deal than what you would get if they didn't like you.
Yeah, I love that. And before I go into some of the more specifics here, how to feel? How to feel when that money just arrived in your account that day, and you're like the only guy leaving college this year with more money in your account afterwards than you had beforehand?
I felt really good. I mean, it told me that I was financially free now and that I could do whatever I wanted to do. The world wasn't going to tell me what I had to do. Uh, and that's something that I can't put in words.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a great feeling. Of course, I went back to the same space because I loved it so much, and I'm still involved with it, obviously through the dojo and through other initiatives. But I can't put in words how great it feels to just be financially free and be able to follow the path that you want to rather than someone else telling you what you have to do.
Beautiful. And are you going to stick with medical, or are you going to move slightly beyond that?
Well, I've diversified my portfolio a lot. And the reason is, and I apologize for the tangent, but there are two types of.
I'm an Irish guy. We love to. I'm a repressed Catholic Irish guy. All we do is tangents.
That's perfect. So, I mean, there are two types of VCs or investors. People that have a very broad, diverse portfolio they invest in dozens of companies,
Yeah.
and because of that, their risk is mitigated, and they get consistent good returns even if they have good exits on a few companies. And then they're very, very specialized focus funds, like they'll only invest in life sciences and a few companies that are very promising. Those funds tend to typically have very high risk,
Yeah.
but then their exits are much larger. So I would say I'm in the first category because I want to test the waters. I'm a relatively young angel investor. 5 years is not a very long time. I know people who've been doing this for 30 years, 35 years. So I want to start with a very generic portfolio and have consistent returns where I build my skills, my base, my relationships, and then maybe focus on a particular area to look at higher risk, higher return sort of investments.
I got you. And how do you know?
How do I know when to make the switch?
No, how do you know when the perfect entrepreneur is in front of you?
I don't actually. So,
Do you get a tingle when you
so it's very easy to get emotional about certain products. Everyone has different backgrounds. For example, I love apples. So if someone gave me an apple pie, I'd be happy. You know, a second person sitting next to me might be like, "Oh, I'm allergic to apples. I hate apple pie." So I tend to temper that emotion by surrounding myself with experts like yourself, Brian, and with other angel investors. So angel investors have this little secret. They're part of a national association,
Yeah.
and they can call on other people to do due diligence with. And so if I get too excited or too depressed with a presentation, the first thing I'll do is there's this alarm that goes off in my head. I need a second opinion.
Yeah.
And so that's how I know if an entrepreneur is good. If everyone that surrounds me starts saying, okay, this person is great, that's when I know that, okay, this person is great. I don't let my emotions get the better of me. And that's the moment where I can tell, okay, this is going to be a good company.
Yeah.
Because everyone has a different
And you're right.
opinion.
You're like Plasticine Angels down here, Tech Coast Angels down here.
Yeah.
Great groups of just like-minded people, right, who have a lot of experience combined.
Well, what's interesting is, so for example, the Golden Seeds or
Yeah.
Tech Coast Angels, which I'm part of, or Pasadena Angels, or any other angel organization, New York Angels on the East Coast, they are all internally connected through a national angel organization, and we do lots of deal syndication. So if I knew an expert in New York Angels and I had a relationship with him or her, I would make sure that they come in on the due diligence of a project that they understand,
Right.
just to make sure that I don't make an emotional decision.
Right.
So that's
It's really interesting you say that about emotional decisions. I have over the last 4 or 5 months, I've become absolutely convinced that a large percentage of positive deal decisions are made based on FOMO.
yes,
Right.
yes,
And I hate to take like a 12-year-old situation to describe how some of the best angels, but there's a feeling when you feel like it's going to go, because it's hard. And this is for entrepreneurs here as well. We haven't really talked about this on the podcast, but let's say you're looking to raise $1 million and you go to an angel and you say, can you give me $100,000? Well, the hard thing for that angel who's leading is that they may give you $100,000 and you may not fill the rest of the round, which means they're kind of screwed.
right.
They've done the right thing. You got a great company, but other people couldn't be bought in. But you don't have enough money to build what you want to build, so you can never make it to the next stage.
Yes.
So the ideal place to be for every angel is almost to be the last person being asked in that round, which is where the FOMO comes in. But that's hard for the entrepreneur, because then who the hell is going to lead the round in the first place? So it is a challenge, because the whole game here is being able to get the entrepreneur through this current round so they're prepared for the next round ahead of their numbers, so the valuation can keep on increasing, right?
Right. I completely agree. And another really important point here is the reputation of the entrepreneur. If they don't close the round and they let their previous investors down, that reputation, that bad reputation spreads.
Yeah,
and
they're
like I
done.
said, the angels are very well connected. They know people. If there's something that they did which was, unprofessional or untowardly with another angel group, our angel group's going to hear about it.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Beyond just the financial damage, there's a lot of reputation damage. The financial damage might not cross over into your next company, but the reputation damage is going to cross over.
Yeah, tremendously important.
So that's very important.
Do you have any, not personally, it can be personal, but it doesn't have to be, I like to take, not disaster stories to talk about them, because none of us like failure, none of us like disaster. We all want to keep our houses and stuff. But have you got any stories that we can take a lesson from, that either you've seen or heard or been a part of? We don't even need to talk about the specific name of the company, that there's a good lesson we can take from that?
Oh my God, there was one company that stands out. There's terrible, terrible investment, big disaster. I saw it happen firsthand. Luckily, I wasn't a large investor in the company, but I knew people who were. And this was one of those family companies where,
Yeah.
the father was the CEO,
Oh.
the son was the COO, and the daughter was the CFO.
That's tough.
And so this is where emotions run high. And so emotions can be a double-edged sword. They can make you passionate, they can make you motivated, they can keep you in the game when things aren't going the way they should. At the same time, they can be a big problem if the team can't agree on what they want. So there was no professionalism in the company, and this was a massive idea. This idea had the potential and to be something like LinkedIn is.
Wow.
And it was a massive idea. They were doing great in the beginning. Their market capitalization was really good. And then suddenly everything broke apart. The father stopped listening to the son stopped listening to the father, and then the COO and the CEO can't agree anymore. The investors sided with the son because he was more level-headed, so the father was put into a corner, and then he became extremely defensive. Instead of being professional, he became very emotional. The company wasn't able to implement any of its strategies, any of the work that they'd put in. They had a great product, and they had a great year ahead of them, and they ruined it because of the team and the emotions.
It's really funny. I have every month, maybe less, I will get a mind coach or just a coach that's more focused on the emotional mindset of the entrepreneur, and they'll come in here and say, "Hey, Brian, we really want to work with the dojo because I want to help your entrepreneurs be mentally strong for what's going to be coming up towards them." Mm. And the longer I have done this, the more I have realized how tremendously important this is, and the harder it's become to convince entrepreneurs that it's just really bizarre, because I know this is the hardest thing you're going to go through in your entire life. You're an entrepreneur. You're going to go into war with the people you're with. If you go into a partnership, the chances are you're going to break up. If you're going in with your family, God bless you. I mean, it's hell. Like, you're going to ruin not just a business, you're going to ruin your family. And you think people have got long memories? Wait until you fail in a business together and you guys fall out. You'll never talk again. But entrepreneurs don't get this. They don't get how, it's not that we don't get, I'm going to say we because I'm an entrepreneur, I always will be, but it's not that we don't get how difficult it is going to be mentally. I think it's that we don't get the fact that mentally there are very few people that have the fortitude to actually make it through that.
Right. I agree. And the more emotional triggers you put on your path, the worse it is. So I don't recommend going into a business deal with your wife or your father, or it's a bad thing. Most VCs and angels will look at it as a negative rather than a positive. It's one of the things that comes up often if we see families doing business together.
Yeah.
It does work in traditional industries, from father to son and generations, but in this type of industry, it doesn't work so well. The place where you're raising external funding, where you have so many members who are controlling your organization, father-son team, father-daughter team, or mother-son team, doesn't really work so well.
Right. I mean, it sounds nice, right?
Yeah, it sounds really great.
Oh, it's going to be so nice. Yeah. We're going to work together. We go for coffee in the mornings. Well, no, you won't.
Well, don't expect your father to ever treat you like his father, because that's not going to happen. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO of the company. He's still going to think you're a kid.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a
go back
big
up
problem.
To your roots.
Yeah, go exactly.
But I love how you phrased it. Avoid emotional triggers, because that's an actionable takeaway. We've got two really good actionable takeaways today. The first one is that make sure that when you're building your team is not just filled full of the skill set that you require, although that is tremendously important. It's filled full of the skill set that is required to get you the investment to get to the next stage. You can always fill gaps as you go through, but you can't fill the gaps if you don't get there, right? And then the second thing which I love is the emotional triggers. Look at all of the really tough emotional You want to be like Iceman in Top Gun. There's a few of you are going to say, what the friggin' hell is that? But then there's a few others, you'll know exactly what I mean. Avoid the emotional triggers. I really love that. What else have we got? So as far as looking for other success factors that can help a company be successful, you see a startup at the beginning, you've done a couple of discussions with them. What are those particular areas that you really like and you feel it can get them to the next stage?
So one of the other, pitfalls that I see is, and in business, this is normal. There's sales, which is exaggeration, right? There's marketing, which is, again, exaggeration. But then there's flat out lying. It's very easy to start lying.
Right.
Blur the line between exaggeration, projection, and lies.
It's a strong word,
Yeah.
but as entrepreneurs, it's almost a word that needs to come from. It's almost like it is unconscious lying.
Yeah,
is
right.
that is that
Right.
is that right?
That's correct.
Because
That's
they
correct.
don't wake up in the morning and say,
No.
"Dude, I'm gonna lie to
No.
people today." It's just
It
crazy.
just comes out. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
comes out under pressure, under nervousness.
Yeah.
Maybe your projections turned into something that you can't support with data, or it's something that you just pulled out of thin air. And that's where you have to be careful. Projections are great. Exaggerations are part of sales, part of selling yourself. But you don't want to start lying. That's something that's frowned upon, obviously, and it puts a stamp on your resume, on your personality, on your reputation. So that's another pitfall I would say you should stay away from. I would rather err on the side of being conservative than lying, but I would definitely say project what you think is correct. Have supporting data for it. If you want to, exaggerate your projections and you think you're more optimistic than other people, that's fine. Some people are more optimistic, some people are pessimists. That's how the world is. But don't take it into the realm where it's unbelievable, where there's no supporting data, because that will be frowned upon.
I like that. And
So-
share so we always talk here about sharing updates with investors. So
Yes.
investors know, whether future, past, or present investors know exactly what's happening within your business. Not only is it okay to tell investors if you missed a milestone, but it shows that you're stronger than the average bear.
Yeah.
Right? If you can say, this is where we're going. We had a minor blip here with this one area, but what we've realized is by changing our marketing focus from Facebook ads, for example, to videos, that we believe next month that we'll be able to catch up and go ahead. I just wanted to keep you aware of the full picture.
Right. Investors love transparency. So the more transparent you can make your failures and successes, the better.
Yeah.
And if you try to hide things from your investors, you're going in the wrong direction.
I love that. Tell the truth. Make sure you tell the truth.
Right.
We can come back for some nuggets in a second. Is your company your biggest success ever? It has to be, right? Or did you invest in a company maybe that you would consider to be a bigger success? Because it doesn't have to be. By the way, it cannot be your wife.
Yeah,
okay?
no,
There's
not my
family.
wife. Well, I have a 1-year-old son, so
It can't be
he's
a
out.
one-year-old
He's
son.
out.
He's out. Doesn't count.
Yeah, my wife doesn't count. So the two biggest successes are out. Okay, so let's go for the third biggest success, and that's so financially speaking, from a numbers perspective, there is a company that I've invested in that has the potential to be a $500 million company, $1 billion company, and they're well on their way to that.
Wow.
So I would say that this is a life sciences company. They're doing a very fundamental level change in the pharmacy and life sciences realm, which is great. But at the same time, I feel like for me, my business, it will always be the greater success because I was personally involved and it gave me my start. And so that is my greatest achievement. Of course, I'm going to be investing in companies that will probably have larger exits, but that's only from a financial perspective. A mathematician might say, hey, this is the best success. But again, I'm emotional too. So
it's hard to beat
that
your
first one is always going to be.
It's hard to beat your first baby,
Yeah,
even when it's
so-
your first company baby.
Right.
What type of actual companies do you generally look for? Are you looking for investments of like 50,000, 100, couple of hundred? You looking for specific space? Like, just give us maybe a little bit of a feel.
Yeah, so usually, I'll invest with my with the angel group that I'm part of, Tech Coast Angels, because we have so much due diligence that we can do together, and we de-risk each other. So, if people do come in to Tech Coast Angels, usually what the terms are that they have to be under $10 million in valuation cap, and I've seen investments come in from $1 million all the way to $5 million. So, but we'll also do very small investments like 100,000. The biggest advantage is the network that you get through that investment. So beyond just the money, there's a huge network of angels that come in, and there are about 300 of them in the Tech Coast Angels chapters around the U.S. So that's probably something entrepreneurs need to look at. That are they getting other value except just the money? Are they getting advisors? Are they getting strategic partners? That's massive, especially in certain industries where you can't sell your product unless you have someone on the inside.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the kind of investments we do, where we can add strategic value. At the same time, we are able to come together and do better due diligence.
But you must see one where you think, ah,
Oh, me.
they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
But I love this business.
Right. So anything that has to do with technology that is defensible.
Yeah.
And I mean, so I saw an article in on Inc.com a few days ago where they were talking about the difference between shallow work and deep work.
Okay.
And so deep work is the kind of work that's rare. It's not easy to replicate, which means it's very defensible, and it's a fundamental in nature. So there are many types of disruption. Disruptions could be at the business model level, they could be at the commercial level, they could be a completely new market that you're creating that's cannibalizing another market. But this disruption is fundamental in nature. It's a new technology, it's something that's not been thought of before. It's going to revolutionize the way certain industries operate on a fundamental level. And those are the kinds of things that really excite me because they have the go big or go home kind of mentality. And sometimes people will not come along because it's high risk. At the same time, it's so exciting to see something new happening.
I was reading yesterday about the guys who invented smell.
Yeah.
The iterations of smell that went through, starting with the cinemas,
Yeah.
and then the more recent one where they try to bring smell to the internet. It's a toughie, right? Because when you're trying to go from horse and carriage to car,
Yeah,
it's a huge success, but it's
Right.
expensive failure as well. You got some brave people go for those
well,
things.
hats off to them. They've got the support
Yeah.
and they're going after it. So hats off to them.
No, it's a big thing. What is the best advice you ever got?
Best advice I ever got is don't work a 9 to 5.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
But okay, can I amend that advice a little bit? Maybe say it's okay to work 9 to 5 as long as what you're building towards is not working a
Right.
9 to 5, right?
Right.
So if you're sitting in a job and you got to work the first 12 hours in your job and the second 12 hours are on your passion and your dream and what you're trying to do, technically it's not a 9 to 5 anyway, right?
Right.
But have a mentality right from the beginning of I am not going to work for the next 40 years in some office doing stuff for other people and clocking in and clocking out is brilliant advice.
Well,
Who gave you that advice?
My father.
Oh, good dad.
My father gave me that advice because he says, so if there are very few people who are born to be leaders, and those are the ones that turn out to be entrepreneurs usually. Now, but there's this large chunk of those entrepreneurs that are, that have been put in the follower group because they have no choice. They're working 9 to 5. The problem with that is not the fact that you're working for someone. Working is great. If you become an entrepreneur, you're going to have to work. It's not the fact that you're escaping work. It's the ability to have the mental freedom to think of new ideas, to, grow yourself personally. And this is what a lot of corporations aren't doing. Their staff just gets stuck in a certain rut and they can't get out of it. They can't personally or mentally grow.
Yeah.
And this is what these leaders need because these people have the ability to fundamentally change the world. And they don't have that time to think about those fundamental changes when they're in a 9 to 5 job.
I love that comment.
So.
I watch these YouTube adverts and they just really kind of make me sick because they're all related to make lots of money, give up your job and have all these things. And it was never about that, not as an entrepreneur. It's about we have this tremendous creativity, which is whatever God-given skill, talent that we've had. And we go and work for a company for our whole lives. Now, I'm leaving aside all of the great things people do. If you've got kids and you've got families and stuff, you've got to take care of them. Obviously, I understand that. But we're talking about a totally separate segment here, which is our entire creativity to be the change in the world that we want it to be. And that's what entrepreneurship allows us to do by creating things that would never have existed before. It's beautiful, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's exactly what I wanted to say, too. You put it in better words than me, but that's exactly what I wanted to say. There are some people who have this urge to create, this urge to go and do new things, and they feel it inside. And that's why corporate life can be such a pain for those people. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people who love corporate life. They're happy doing what they do. I've seen all types, and they should stay there But then there are people who will think, okay, I had this idea and I wanted to do this or that. And I would encourage those people not to go on with reckless abandon. If you have financial responsibilities, do it slowly. Test the waters a little bit. If you don't jump into the deep end of the pool the first time you go to swim, try with the shallow end. Don't give up your job. See if it makes sense. And then if it does make sense, slowly become an expert swimmer. That's what I say.
I love it. Reckless abandon. It's like we're getting into Oscar Wilde territory here. Like we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Come on. Doesn't get any better than that. Who's your favorite entrepreneur? Someone you really admire?
So, I'm not going to mention any of the standard ones like Elon Musk, who I do admire because he loves Los Angeles, and I love Los Angeles, and I know that there are not a lot of people in the Silicon Valley who are very big on Los Angeles. They're more like, okay, let's keep all the technology up in Northern California. I think the ecosystem here is so much more diverse and rich.
Yeah.
And I love people who support that. So anyone who supports that, she lands on my favorite list. Elon Musk being one of them.
Right.
So whether they're eccentric, whether they're not, I don't care. If you love Los Angeles, you love Southern California, you want to support the ecosystem here, you're my favorite entrepreneur.
So it's an entrepreneur who supports the local community and helps the local community get better.
Right.
As opposed to, and I really like that, as opposed to selling out and just going to a place where it's already in place. And if it's already in place, okay, cool. I mean, it was fine, but you didn't really add to that place. But you do it in your own place. You change an entire generation within that place. Favorite new gadget?
Favorite new gadget? I'm trying the Oculus VR these days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually really cool.
I prefer the domes. It's tough. I'm with 5 or 6 people. I have my headset on. They've got their headsets on.
Right.
I was like, come on, we're right beside each other.
I understand. There is that problem with, we already have our phones and we're always looking at our phones. With these VR headsets, we're probably never going to talk to anyone. So I agree. There is that social problem there.
But it is cool, though.
Yeah, it's a cool technology,
cool.
though.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What about books? I want to say we've had some great books come through here.
So,
favorite books.
Actually, I have one that I was reading and I would recommend to entrepreneurs. It's called Venture Deals by Brad Feld and Jason Mendelsohn.
This is a great book because it talks you through all the way through the process, right?
And it gives you the point of view that a VC or an angel has coming into the deal, or your startup lawyer has. So it has lots of technicalities, lots of legal things, lots of problems and pitfalls that an entrepreneur can face, but from the VC and angel perspective. So you can actually get into their minds and understand what they're looking at. And like we mentioned in the beginning, tailor your team so that they see what they like seeing.
Yeah,
I love that'll give you that perspective, that particular book, Venture Deals.
It's such a great idea. All of you coming into early stage entrepreneurship, starting off your own business, you don't understand how difficult this is. And I don't mean you don't understand how difficult it is to start a business. Of course you do. You've seen it and everybody's told you, you've heard it 1,000 times. I mean, you don't understand how difficult it is to go through the investment rings that you're going to have to go through between now and making it all the way through to exit. It's really, really complicated. You got to educate yourself as much as you can so you get the right people to advise you, right?
Yep. Exactly. And I think that you need to be familiar with the terms, the financial concepts, because in the end, for an investor, the primary concern is money. That's why they're called investors. Some of them are passionate, want to help the community, but that's obviously a secondary motive. So if you don't understand money, if you're not from a finance background, if you're maybe a technical person or you're an artist or a creative person, understand the financial aspects, understand the terms, the rules, the way this industry works, the way angel investment and venture capital works, so that you can tailor your presentations, your pitches, your business model to that particular industry. The rules are very different from standard businesses or things that you've seen in your life. And I would say the more you're aware of it, the easier it'll be for you to secure the funding and get to a successful exit.
Wonderful. And I want to finish up, if we can, with some predictions for the rest of this year. So we're seeing really hot valuations in last mile logistics with those companies going crazy and a lot of acquisitions in there as well. Life sciences, there's some really interesting things happening in there. And there's also with VR, a lot of the venture folks have stepped away for a couple of minutes just till they see what's happening. Where do you see the rest of the year going?
Well, the other thing I would add there is the whole blockchain thing that's going on.
Yeah.
That's one of the big ones.
Yeah.
EOS just launched recently, and they had a $4 billion
Am I the
ICO.
only one who thinks this is insane?
I think it's insane. I definitely think it's insane. I mean, the valuations are really out there. Yeah.
$4 billion
Right,
for a startup.
Right.
Come on.
$4 billion. So, like...
Brock Pierce, God bless you. I mean, my hats are off.
Yeah.
Because sane investors put money into this platform.
Right. And I mean, in the end, the proof is in the pudding, right? So if people are going to put money there, it doesn't matter what the naysayers say, including myself, investors are going to come. The investors are going to show up.
I want to just add a comment on here as well. I'm with you. I love, like, blockchain for me is great, and crypto is great, and initial coin offerings are really great. But this is, again, all of our early stage startups listeners out there. Please don't take a normal business and then just start creating some kind of huge crypto angle to it because you see higher valuations. It's one of the things that's causing a real problem here. If you have something which is absolutely reliant on blockchain, maybe it's a payment mechanism that you want to have lower fees, or you have somewhere there's crypto involved, or maybe it's an energy mechanism where you're giving energy to third world countries, like, it's okay because you need it to specifically make your business function. But if you just have a normal dating business on a Monday and then on a Tuesday you think, oh, why don't we just do an initial coin offering to make sure that our dating business, because we want to be able to track everybody we've dated. Yeah. It's like, don't do that.
No, don't. And I mean, for every crypto success story, there's thousands that have failed. So just like you see EOS doing really well, and this is not to get very, morbid on you, but there are situations where ICO founders have been jailed.
Lots of them.
So this is not an industry you want to touch unless you're sure of what you're doing, you have the right support, and you understand the specific area that you're targeting. I don't feel like getting money, and ICO is a way of getting money from the general public. IPOs, and I'm sure most of you know what an initial public offering is, usually happen when the company's well into its maturity. It has a solid backing. ICOs, on the other hand, are completely backwards. You start your company with an ICO, but it's a mechanism to get investment from the public. Anytime you get investment from a generic person on the street, there are tremendous federal regulations and protections in place, and you don't want to mess with those.
Yeah.
If you're going to private investors, if you're going to angels and VCs, you're protected. You will not be protected if you have a mechanism to raise money from the general Jack, Jill, or Joe on the street. That's not going to happen. So be careful, step with caution, and don't put, like Brian said, blockchain into everything, because that also brings certain downsides. And for every successful case, there's thousands that have failed.
Man, we've heard so much good advice on the show today. Thank you so much. If anybody's looking to contact you, is it through LinkedIn, or would you like them to reach out to us?
Yeah, they could search my name, Sunny Singh, maybe put UCLA or Tech Coast Angels next to it. That'll bring me up. They can find me on the Tech Coast Angels membership website. I also run an IT and security services company, CMIT Solutions. They can find me there. They can contact Brian at the Expert Dojo and find me. So it's easy to reach me. I'm in Los Angeles most of my time, and I'm happy to help.
Thank you, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar. Huge advice today. We got lots of really good feedback. I love it. Again, thanks for listening. I continually get feedback from all of our listeners saying thank you to the investors for everything you share. I know it comes straight from the heart, and especially with you, Sonny, because you're an entrepreneur, come good, turned into an angel, giving back to the community. So from all of us to you, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. The Dojo is doing great work, and I'm very, very happy to be here.
I feel all squidgy now. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for joining us. If you know any other entrepreneur equally ambitious as you, then share this podcast by paying it forward to other entrepreneurs who are building your own army. Now, as always, our website, expertdojo.com, is packed with information to help you grow your business, find investment, and train for victory. We also walk our talk and invest in startups every year in our accelerator here in Silicon Beach. You can always reach out to me at brian@expertdojo.com, and I look forward to being back here again at our regular time next Tuesday, 10 a.m. with another of the world's top investors, helping you win the war against startup failure.